What's up, YouTube? So I thought it would be cool to go through some of the comments on the RPE auto-regulation video that I posted a couple days ago because there was some insightful discussion in the comment section, and let's go through it. Shall we? Okay. Firstly, so if you haven't watched that video, you can watch the video. Then these comments will have more context. Sounds like, comment number one, sounds like semantics. I'd say auto is driven by the participant, aka self, and RPE is self-regulation. And he says, curse away, he or she. Curse away, fuck it. Fuck it is right. Yeah, a lot of you said that if you want to monetize your YouTube channel, because I had asked about it, can we curse on this thing? If you want to monetize your YouTube channel, then don't curse. I don't care about that. I was just worried about videos getting taken down. I guess that doesn't make any sense. People curse on YouTube all the time. So, okay, to the semantics. And then there was a reply to this comment. It very much does sound like semantics. I'm adding that second part. I agree with you. I feel people want to have a title for everything and then defend that title with their lives. I am of the school of thought, call it whatever the fuck you want, just make sure it works. Okay. And I'm gonna preface this by saying I'll never say anything on these videos, especially when I go through the comments. I'll never say anything on this video that I wouldn't say to you in person while I'm buying you a beer, and if you don't drink alcohol, while I'm buying you a non-alcoholic ginger beer with lime, delicious drink, by the way. Semantics, everything is semantics. Semantics is literally the meaning of language, the meaning of our words. Maybe your point is that the semantics in this case don't matter, and that's fine. And then the argument for just do whatever the fuck you want as long as it works. My problem with that is that's fine if you apply it only to yourself, but along with the semantics argument, people tend to be very selective with what they choose to say, semantics, and do whatever the fuck you want. But if it's something that they care about or hits their bias, then they're all about the semantics and they're all about the nitty-gritty details. So I just find those arguments, one, are never applied consistently, and two, don't actually move any conversations forward, because do whatever the fuck you want is how a lot of bullshit gets pushed and a lot of money is transacted on that bullshit. You can rub your gooch with peanut butter, and if it happened on the same day that you hit a PR back squat, then you can say it was because of this magic peanut butter that I rubbed in my gooch, and then I can package it up and I can sell it because do whatever the fuck you want. It worked. I did it, and then this thing happened. You see that? How that kind of works? So now, with that said, it sounds like you all are misunderstanding the point of the original video. So I'm not trying to argue which term describes the same thing. Should we say auto-regulation or should we say RPE? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's this false dichotomy out there in the training world where people think that a program that is solely based on or mostly based on percentages is not an auto-regulated program. And a program that is RPE based is auto-regulation. And there's, again, this false dichotomy where, because you use percentages, you must not be able to auto-regulate. You must not be able to be flexible in your strategy. That's what I'm attacking. RPE is a method to help one auto-regulate. However, you don't have to, I'm talking specifically about an RPE chart, not RPE in this general sense. Quantifying and prescribing and monitoring exercise with RPE numbers, rating of perceived exertion scales, or repetition and reserve, rating of perceived effort scales, which is a difference in those two terms that does matter that I'll go into based on a comment here in a second. So that's what I'm saying. And it's a ridiculous dichotomy because, of course, you can auto-regulate and be flexible even if you don't use RPE charts. And that was the whole point. There are people out there that equate their program with auto-regulation because they use RPE. And then I gave examples of how, well, you could implement RPE in a shitty way And so now you're not auto-regulating any better than somebody who's just using percentages, but takes a flexible and nuanced approach, pays attention to their lifter, adjusts their prescriptions as needed. So couple more comments here. Hopefully that makes sense. These longer form content are awesome. Thank you. Good. Glad it is helpful. I feel like, okay, another one here. I feel like if you've been around strength training long enough, you've seen programs with RPE/RIR, repetitions in reserve, correlated with percentages in the way that is recognizable and reliable. Yeah, I think I know what you mean, and I could see that too. RPE does generally feel a little more wieldy to me, as in kind of more easily applicable or easily applied. If you're low contact with a coach, maybe remote or self-managed. Yeah, I would agree with that too. And that's the other thing. Again, it's not a dichotomy. You can do both. I prescribe very often both an external load prescription, either it's a percentage or a straight absolute load. Oftentimes it's a loading range. So I'll give them kind of, especially in a rehab scenario, I'll give them a lower and an upper bound of the actual weight that I want on the bar. And then I'll give them an RPE range if that's a method and a tool that we have that we're comfortable and familiar with. So it's, work within this external load range at this RPE cap. So no set is greater than RPE 9, work within, but you can't go any heavier than this anyway. So it's kind of bound externally and internally, and it gives the person plenty of flexibility and wiggle room to surf. And that's not all of my prescriptions. I have done that, and it's a nice way to marry the two, and again get rid of this false dichotomy. Okay, another one here. It's just a long one, but I think there's some good stuff here. Looking forward to more videos like this. Me too. I don't use RPE because my brain just doesn't get around to it. I can assume RPE 9 or 10, but not really lower, and feel confident about it. And so many things affect my perception of how hard the training was that I have trouble trusting myself on if I'm just skipping work I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah, good point. And then a follow-up comment. You are pretty, it's difficult pulling singles to know where you are on the RIR because you only get one of them. Moreover, how we are feeling on a specific day can change our capacity to feel exertion. Okay, this is why exertion and effort matter. So you'll very often hear RPE as rating of perceived exertion or rating of perceived effort, and it's often that those two terms are interchangeable. And you might go, semantics. It's not semantics. Think about this. Exertion is our perceived strain. So thought experiment, and this has been studied. Someone goes to a 15 rep max in a back squat. Someone goes to a 3 rep max in a back squat. Both sets are to maximum. 15 rep max, 3 rep max. No more reps could be completed. Which person or which group do you think rates the set as more exertional? The 15 rep max, because a 15 rep max fucking sucks. It burns. It hurts like hell. It takes a long time. You're out of breath. The perceived exertion is very high. Yet both of them went to the same effort. Effort is proximity to task failure. Effort is equated in both of those groups. However, one group rated their effort as more exertional. So if you're using an RPE scale that's just light or easy, medium, hard, they're likely their exertion or their perception of exertion is going to be skewed by the nature of the task. However, if it's a strength training movement where you can use this scale, the repetitions in reserve scale or a rating of perceived effort scale helps to mitigate that difference, because a 15 rep max is 0 RIR, reps in reserve. A 3 rep max is 0 reps in reserve. Now, it's still not going to be perfect. People are still going to fuck that up. You'll still need to anchor and take people to a true 10 periodically so that they know what a 10 is and they can actually reverse engineer from that. But that is why the repetitions in reserve scale is so useful in a resistance training format, is because it does mitigate the confusion of something feels hard versus could I have performed another rep. It doesn't matter how much it burns or if it just felt heavy, because that's another construct that's separate from exertion, is perceived heaviness. It's all up in the weeds. Perceived fatigue is also different. But it doesn't matter if you're going from effort, because effort is proximity to failure. Could you have done another rep? Did you fail a rep? Period. That's a 10. Doesn't matter if it burned. It doesn't matter if it was a 1 rep max, because you're at the same level of effort, proximity to muscular failure. So if you're having trouble with RPE and you haven't used the repetitions and reserve scale, shout out Mike Tushier of Reactive Training Systems for inventing that, I would give the repetitions and reserve scale a shot. And again, this is more for just traditional resistance training that's for repetitions. That comment continues. For me, I sort of need that objective programming that I can auto-regulate based on the recovery. Many people would argue that RPE is objective if you're consistent with it, like the repetitions and reserve, but I hear you. I'm not experienced enough to just pull out some weight and say, that was good enough for the stimulus I'm after. I don't think anybody is, really. Even if a program, you have to do it. Even if a program says something like a single with 5 RIR, I calculate that from training load charts, 1 rep max, because I have no idea what would more than 3 RIR accurately feel like, and neither does anybody else. So this isn't just you. Once you get past 3 repetitions in reserve, the consistency of prediction and accuracy just tanks. Nobody knows what 5 reps in the tank feels like. And so if you use RIR 5 in your prescriptions, you just need to concede that that is a very loose guideline. Like, I will tell people, if I'm programming RPE 5, you just know, or RIR 5, you just know, like, leave a bunch of reps in the tank. Nothing should slow down. And I'll do that in a rehab scenario, or I'll do it if it's an explosive effort and we want it to be fast. And often I will definitely be giving external load, like actual load prescriptions within that, because to exactly what you said, nobody can accurately gauge where 5 RIR is, and really even 3, unless you've anchored to what an actual 10 is in that specific task, again, periodically, to feel what going there is truly like. Continued. That I believe to know because supposedly the bar speed slows down noticeably, fairly consistent around 3 RIR. Yeah, velocity is linearly correlated with repetitions in reserve. Let's say you're doing a set of 10 in the back squat to a 10 rep max, or whatever the movement. I keep using back squat, just any movement. Any movement that's less not ballistic or doesn't use a stretch shortening cycle. So like bench, squat, deadlift, and then machines or accessory movements that you can control every repetition and make every rep kind of consistent. So as repetitions in reserve go down, as you approach proximity to failure, as you approach a 100% effort, momentary task failure, repetitions in reserve goes down, so does bar speed, so does movement velocity. That's common sense, that's very logical, but that's exactly how they validated the RIR scale, is they compared it to the reference standard of velocity. They used like a gym aware. And so they said, yeah, velocity is, if you have that, that's a great, I like velocity-based training for the very reasons that you're talking about. You can still cheat velocity. There's many ways to kind of game it. You can like go really fast at the top after you've kind of like done all the work. You can like with a back squat too, you can almost like jump at the top and it skews everything. But I just tell people, like, just be honest with yourself. You're only cheating yourself. You're only confusing yourself. So as long as you're consistent, velocity-based training is fantastic, and it takes away a lot of the having to rely on your perception. Many times I would surprise myself by doing a hard set and aiming for close to failure when I'd be actually able to do more reps after the point where I thought I was closing in on failure. Yes, that is anchoring to what a true 10 is. So you have to do that to get accurate with an RPE, rating of perceived effort, scale over time. The more you can actually go to that place of what a true 10 is, the more reliable you're going to be with that scale. And it's not just when it starts to burn either, or when things start to be perceived as hard. If you're watching somebody going through a set and their movement velocity is not slowing down, they're not close to true failure. And Oftentimes when it starts to get uncomfortable, that's when people stop and they just like gas. They just stop. It's like the movement didn't slow down at all. If I didn't know you told me that it was starting to get uncomfortable, it looked like you just quit. You got to keep going if we want to go to a true 10. Now, if you don't want to take your people there, that's fine too. So I'm just kind of talking about if you want to use RPE and you want it to be as reliable as possible, then anchoring is important. And you pick and choose the movements that you feel comfortable doing that with people. And so he says, after the point where I thought I was closing in on failure until when I was confident that the next rep wouldn't make it or would be the last if I could make it. Yeah, again, exactly. So if you want to start on like accessory movements or machine-based movements where there's really no concern with going to that place, then, start there. There's going to be very limited transfer. Like going to that place on a leg extension or a leg press is going to have very minimal transfer to your ability to gauge that true 10 on back squats. So just know that doesn't actually necessarily work like that. You have to do it in the task. And if you're not familiar or you're not comfortable taking certain movements to that place, then don't. Use percentages or use a external load range or use submaximal RPE. Just know that most people undershoot exactly what you just said. Most people think, oh yeah, I'm right about an 8. And if they've got somebody yelling at them and they're, motivated, they've got usually have a lot more reps than they think that they do. And then finally, to my understanding, these days, people need to bleep oh, you're talking about YouTube again. Okay, yeah. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful. That comment was helpful. Thought there was one more here. Yeah, Eli, what's up? Shout out. In the first year or so of Mass, Eric Helms and Mike Zordos, who are, once Mike T came out with the RIR chart in like 2008, Eric Helms and Mike Zordos started to study it around 2015, 2016. Up until now, they've done a ton of work in that area. Eric Helms and Mike Zordos. James Steele also is somebody to look into. He goes really deep in the weeds. Eric Helms and Mike Zordos had a lot of discussions on autoregulation and various tools within the tool bag of RPE/RIR, which was one of them. Using any form of flexibility in the training program to match the current work capacity to is autoregulation. Exactly. So that was the big crux of the first video. Is autoregulation is the overarching principle, which can be carried out in many ways. Literally, if it's just me and a single athlete, I'm just watching and taking in their subjective feedback and how their movement looks, and I say go up or go down in weight, that is, and we have this conversation together, or they make those distinctions on their own with no RPE chart, no bar velocity, no nothing, just the numbers on the program, and then they make decisions. That is autoregulation. Some people will say, well, I like this RIR chart. It helps me make better decisions. Great. That's a method of autoregulation. I like barbell velocity. Great. That's a method of autoregulation. But don't also say that you can't autoregulate if somebody uses mainly percentage-based training. You can still autoregulate. And the research makes this dichotomous as well. You'll see percentage-based training versus RPE often gets conflated to percentage-based training versus autoregulation. And it's, the autoregulation is kind of put on this pedestal, which when you look at the outcomes, they're never really all that different. But that, I think, feeds into this dichotomy that, RPE equals autoregulation and percentage-based training is antiquated and it's we've moved past that and we're better than that now. No, it's all still working. People get really, really strong working off percentages, and people get really, really strong working off RPE, and you can use both. Okay, that's all I got. So hopefully that was helpful, and if it wasn't, put it down in the comments.